And so you stand up in the class and you stand up at the board and you say, all right, we're going to go down, we're going to list 10 fruits and vegetables. We're not going to say which ones they are. We're just going to say their name. And then you're going to write them down on your sheet of paper on your little lines. And next to them, you're going to write F or B for is it a fruit or is it a vegetable? And again, don't share your answers. Don't share your answers. Okay, so you're standing at the front, and what you're going to do is you're going to let the students come up with a lot of these. So, all right, everybody, raise your hand. What's your favorite fruit or vegetable? So a student will raise their hand. Yes, Jimmy, go ahead. And Jimmy will say, my, favorite fruit is strawberries. And you write strawberries up on the board, and the rest of the class writes strawberries down. And silently, the students write, F or B on there. And then for the second one, you want to throw your opinion in there, and you're like, oh, you know what? I really like green bell peppers, or just bell peppers. But you want to make sure you get bell peppers on there. So bell peppers are right next, and next student says, oh, carrots. Another student says broccoli. Then you want to throw in there eggplant. You want to make sure you get eggplant in there. Then take a couple more from the students, and then you want to throw in another one that's going to kind of purposefully throw them off, and you're going to throw in cucumber. Okay, so you're going to have the students list most of these, but you want to make sure you get those three in there. And the reason for that is you will see. So once you have everyone has written everything down, they've all filled out their answers, then that's when you get to say, all right, now we're going to go over this. And again, please don't change your answers. Just mark it if you got it wrong, just so that way we know what we learned. And you'll go and you'll start with the first one. All right, everybody, drum roll, please. Which one for number one are strawberries a fruit or a vegetable? And the students will raise their hand. You'll call on somebody and they'll say it's a fruit. And you're going to be like, oh my God, you're amazing. Yes, that's correct. And then you're going to go for the second one. Drum roll, please. Students will do a little drum roll on their desk, and you'll call on the next student. And that student will most likely 9 times out of 10 say that bell peppers are a vegetable. And that is kind of what we're hoping for, because when they do say that it is a vegetable, you're going to go, oh my gosh, you are incorrect. And you're going to hear a couple of your students, be like, what? And kind of under their breath talk about it like you're wrong. And you're going to move on. You're not going to discuss it right then and there. You're going to go through that list. And so you'll knock them off, one after the other. And the students are going to be starting to discuss amongst themselves. And they're going to be trying to find a trend. So you're going to get to eggplant. And, when you ask, well, is eggplant a fruit or vegetable? Most likely, they are going to say that it is a vegetable. And you're going to go, I'm sorry, but you are incorrect. It is a fruit. And as you go down this list, they're going to start discussing the other fruits that are on that list and trying to figure out what the difference is between these fruits and vegetables, because it's not necessarily something that they really think about. They think of fruits and vegetables in culinary terms, not in scientific terms. So they're going to very quickly figure it out. And all of the kids who had wrote down that cucumber is a vegetable will, by the time you get to cucumber at the bottom of the list, they will know and be ready, and they will say that that is a fruit. And you will probably hear the class announce themselves that it's because they all have seeds. And that's when you're going to go over, some of the background information, and you're going to go over the differences between fruits and vegetables. What makes a fruit? Well, a fruit is anything that develops from the ovule of a flower, right? It has seeds, and that's going to be your number one, telltale sign. And then a vegetable is every other part of the plant. So that's the roots, that's the stalk, that's the leaves. So spinach, that's a vegetable. Celery, that's a vegetable. Carrots, that's a vegetable. So there are all of these, things that are really easily overlooked that are also extremely critical to understanding this very core concept, and understanding the functions of a flower, the parts of a flower, the flower reproductive cycle. These are all meeting core standards that have to be taught in the classroom. So this is one of the best lessons you can start. Can everybody else still hear me? Great. So by doing this activity for them, you're making it really it's low stakes and it's fun. You want to make it as fun as possible. That's why I always do the drum roll. I always have them do, try to make it, like a game show. Make it, low stakes so that way they can actually experience and feel, oh, you know what? Maybe I don't know everything about farming and agriculture. Maybe there is something here for me to learn. And that's what we really want to do. We really want to show them and kind of expose to them and open their minds up to the fact that they still have stuff to learn when it comes to just putting seeds in the ground and that there's more to it than meets the eye. And so that's really my favorite approach at the beginning of the year. That's the first thing we always do. It's easy, low risk, easy participation grade, and that's going to pique their interest, especially when they think they are super right. It is always a lot of fun. Do we have any questions about that, by the way? The next activity. Now that was great for elementary school and middle school. They're both of those lessons go over and introduce some core concepts that you're going to have to go over throughout the school year, especially if you're in a science classroom. Now, the next thing that I want to go over is actually going to be specifically in regards to teaching NGSS and teaching the core science standards with agriculture. Now, you can do this a couple of different ways. Now, moving on. So what we're going to do next, and now this is something that we actually put, it's an activity that we have in our tabletop living lab, our 6th grade tabletop living lab. So I'll show you what that looks like real quick. Oh, so these are tabletop living lab. This is it's a great indoor hydroponic grow kit that comes with a bunch of different activities and lesson plans and comes with all the seeds and everything you need and a great grow light. And more importantly, it comes with a really great curriculum. So one of the lessons that is in the 6th grade tabletop living lab is actually a physical science and GSS. So it's PS. If you're a middle school science teacher, which one is chemical reactions? It's falling off of my brain right now. It's like MSPS, like 4-4.2 or something like that. If you know it, drop it in the chat, please. So this one is really easy. So you can do this. Obviously, you can do this with our kit. And with our kit, what we do is we utilize microgreens. We utilize microgreens in the classroom. And we utilize them for a variety of different reasons, but they also grow really quickly. So for this experiment, typically what we do is we grow purple cabbage microgreens, and you grow them in 2 separate trays. You do some experiments with them while you're growing them. And then for the lesson that comes after that, you harvest those purple cabbage microgreens and you put them into one giant cup. Now you can use anything you want to mash it. I pre-mashed, so that way I was prepared for this, and I also cheated. So if you can see this, let's see, can I, does it show up? So I'm gonna switch my camera for just a moment, so that way you can see how purple this is. Let's see, camera. So integrated camera. Okay, can you see how purple that is? It's like really purple, which is, it's actually cool. So what I did here, and typically, the way that it is in our list plan is you have the purple radish, or sorry, the purple cabbage microgreens. It takes about 8 to 9 days for them to be ready to harvest. And you're going to take them, you're going to harvest them, and you're going to put them in a cup, and you're going to add a little bit of water. You can use literally anything. You could use a blender if you want to, but I personally think that's overkill. You could find a rock, you can find a fat pen, you can find, you find a variety of things. So you're going to put it in that cup and you're going to mash it up. Now, if you don't have purple cabbage microgreens, guess what? You can still do it if you stop at your local grocery store and you can pick up a full head of red cabbage or purple cabbage. I apologize. Does anybody know where I'm going with this. Does anybody know the secret of purple cabbage? Does anybody have this trick up their sleeve? Very good. Very good, Allison. It is a pH indicator. So purple cabbage has this really special thing about it. It has something in it called anthocyanin. Anthocyanin it is really great for being able to indicate what the pH of something is. So right now, you can go to the store, you can pick up a head of purple cabbage, you can take off, a couple of pieces, mash it up. You're going to get the same result as if you were doing it with purple cabbage microgreens. You just obviously don't do the growing activities that come before it. So you can take that, and you're going to want to make sure that, when you're talking about, chemical reactions or, potential hydrogen, have some information ready to go for about that. Have a really good, you want to make sure you have a really good pH scale ready to put up on the board. And don't wait till the last minute to pick one out, because when you first do Google search for a pH scale, not all of them are like very colorful or useful. So look through before you do that if you don't have our curriculum. So what you're going to do is you are going to obviously the kids go over vocabulary with them. Hopefully they should be starting this lesson on a Monday, and they should have vocabulary for this base, acid, things like that. So what you're going to do is you're going to get an acid and a base. You don't have to have it labeled. We label it. It comes in our kit. We provide baking soda and vinegar. They do not need to know that it's baking soda and vinegar. It can be, mystery chemical X and mystery chemical Y. And you're going to take the vinegar and you're going to split it up into two. Okay. So you will take the acid, mystery chemical X, and you will put it into one. And I am going to switch my camera real quick. Integrated camera. All right. So as you can see here is it's Michelle, Michele at ftfeducation.com. And then just email me saying, that you want the activities. So here is our, purple cabbage mashed up fluid. And I am going to go ahead and I'm going to add our acid. And just like that, almost like magic, it is bright red. And it works that quickly and efficiently. It is extremely bright red. It always impresses me every time. It's one of my favorite experiments to do. So when you have that, obviously the students are going to be able to look up on the board and either follow along with their worksheet or follow along on a sheet of paper and say, was cup number one, is it an acid or a base, and where on the pH scale is it? And they'll be able to look at the pH scale on the board and identify it, obviously have some interaction, select on students to be doing that. So what you're going to do with your next one is you're going to take some baking soda and you are going to dump it. Oh, whoops. You are going to dump it right into the cup. And as you can see, it turns this really pretty bright blue very immediately. Now, it is possible to use too little baking soda. If you don't, if you have, a large glass, you do want to use a little bit extra baking soda to make it a bit more dramatic and clear. Because just depending on how dense the pigment is, it won't shift as much. The red is very bright and very clear, but because of the fact that it is already a dark aqueous liquid, if you don't do enough of the baking soda, then it won't be as much of a change. Nice, perfect. Perfect. Okay. And then obviously take this, have the students compare it on the pH scale that is on the board. Okay, you want to build a garden. So what's the first thing you do? Well, you need a garden bed, and we don't always have the best budgets. So the easiest thing to do is to get, a 2x12 and cut that into, 4 pieces and build a garden bed. That's the easiest, that's the path that we think is of least resistance. However, then, you get the, district to buy you a piece of wood, and then you realize, oh, I have to bring that piece of wood back. And then you realize you have to cut that piece of wood, and then you realize you have to drill it together. And then you also need to fill it with soil, and the kids are going to complain about getting dirty and all of these things, right? So hopefully maintenance is really nice and they help you with this. Or, maybe it gets delivered and then maintenance can help you cut it. Or maybe, there's someone who has a chop saw. I know I have borrowed many chop saws in my day from the head warehouse of the school district. So you run into all of these issues. And then with the wood garden bed, the thing that is really difficult with a wood garden bed is you put it down and you fill it with soil, and then you're outside, and so grass is growing. So grass is growing all around it, right? And then maintenance is coming in to do their job, and they are taking the lawnmower like right to the edge in order to trim down the grass. And so, like every week or every 2 weeks, that bed is just getting hammered on, right? And then on top of that, if you don't properly set the bottom of that open garden bed, you're going to have your own grass and your own weeds growing through it pretty quickly. Because if you think about it, if you don't create some kind of barrier underneath, and now you're putting on top like all this great compost or fresh soil, you're fertilizing the grass and the weeds that are underneath it that will eventually come up. So if you are going that route, I do recommend putting down cardboard. You can use cardboard that the school is throwing away. You can use whatever you want. Cardboard is going to do a couple of things. So cardboard will act as something that's going to help kill the grass or the weeds underneath it, but it's also, and more importantly, in my opinion, it's going to create this soggy sheet in between the soil in the bed and the hard ground, which most likely you're probably putting this bed on top of red clay. So that red clay, or even the compressed topsoil, is going to be really hard to penetrate. Like, it's pretty hard to dig a hole on school grounds. Like, that dirt is very strong. So what happens by putting that piece of cardboard underneath there is, because it's going to stay, like, you're going to want to soak it, and you're going to cover it, and then you're going to water it every week. So what it's going to do is it's actually going to help soften the ground underneath it. So if you are, packing this beautiful big bed that's, growing all of these plants, those plants will have an easier time breaking through the cardboard and then breaking through that level of topsoil compared to if you hadn't done that in the beginning. So that's just a trick for that, right? That is like something easy to do. Now, what I would also recommend is putting down some cardboard or whatever you can, like at least 6 inches around the garden bed, so that way you're not running into the issue of grass growing immediately into it. And then we all know it's going to easily get taken over by weeds, especially if you don't cover it. And my favorite one of all time is the red ants that at some point in the year move into it, and it's typically over the summertime. So then you have like, okay, students, it's time for garden day. And then they go and, they start pulling weeds, and all of a sudden you hear, oh my God, I'm being attacked. And it's because the garden bed is the perfect place for red ants to build their home. And it is pretty reliable. It is a very reliable thing. I don't have a solution in a traditional garden bed for the ants, other than, if it's going to be left alone during, like, over the summer, just kind of expect there to be ants in there, and just know you have to disturb the bed and a couple of times over, a couple of weeks to get them out of there before students get in there. But I do know for us, so our raised garden bed kits are a little bit less traditional. So with our raised garden kits, it comes with everything you need, and it comes with soil. Like, you don't have to pull, purchase orders or get dirty or get gloves or anything like that. What we do is we actually use something called a garden caterpillar. So this is food grade, food safe, and in the full year, it comes in 10-foot long like little garden beds. And what this does is it does a couple of things. So number one, if you don't have, grass or a grassy area or a field that you can, go put a garden out on, and you have to put it on concrete, you can put this on concrete and you can move it around too. So, if maybe you buy it yourself and you're like, I'm taking that with me, you can take it with me, you can take it with you. Maybe the principal decided, hey, I don't want that, garden there anymore. It's super easy to move around, and it moves around kind of like a caterpillar. When it's 10 feet long, you can actually just pull it, and it's essentially a garden caterpillar that's moving around. Now, the other benefit to this is it's going to retain a lot of water. It's not going to dry out as quickly, and you're not going to have the issues of, ants moving into the bed. It's not just one giant open face, right? So we're actually going to cut into this in order to make our designated planting sites, which is another issue that you end up running into with your students. Okay, you guys are so excited. You did a garden work day. You guys started seeds in the classroom, and now it's finally time to transplant. And then you get out there and, the kids are all excited to transplant. And then the first question you hear is, wait, Miss Kate, where do I plant this? And then every kid asks you the same question. And this is typically when you end up going on Google and finding the grid, the square foot gardening, right? So they're going to tell you, take strings or something and just, put it across the bed and, plant everything in the square foot. And that, that's good. It's a little wasteful of space. But you can, that's totally fine. It does work. It gives you something, it gives, the students something to go off of. But typically that's how teachers discover it, is they go out to try to plant, and then they realize they don't really know where to plant. So with this, we are able to make dedicated planting sites, which also means we can dedicate our beds for certain crops. So we just cut holes in here. And now this is a little miniature guy, so I'm not going to do different sizing. These scissors are not very good. Bum, bum, bum. So by doing this, I now know in my entire garden how many seeds I need to start, right? Because I'm going to have dedicated planting sites. So I'm going to know, okay, we need to start 40 seeds. So we should start 60 seeds, because you always want to account for 20% loss. So however many plants you need to start, no matter what garden you're in or what farm you're on, you always want to account for 20% loss, whether that be, the seeds didn't germinate, maybe the starter plant didn't make it past a certain growth. So you always want to expect a 20% loss. So you want to start 20% more seeds. So now that I have this done, and I actually just pulled these out of the little garden I have going in the back here. So I'm going to transplant them into here. So all you have to do, that guy, so proud of this guy. So all you have to do is stick your little hand in there and then close the soil up. Now, water can penetrate through this, but it's going to retain water really well. So you can take your transplants and you can go around. You don't have to worry about ants getting into here. It's going to maintain water a lot faster. And it's really just super convenient. And if you need to move it, you can, and it's not going to be very difficult. And you also won't have to worry about weeds growing through it every time you're gone for a little bit. So it's just super efficient, super, super efficient. All right. Bada bing, bada boom, just like that. Oh, now, whoops. With that being said, when you do leave for the summer, if you can go to Home Depot and you can get it's called like painter's plastic or something. It's something that you can buy in the paint section of Home Depot, and you can just cover your garden bed with the plastic, and that will solarize it all throughout the summer. You can do it with the tarp as well. It's a lot. I will say, if you can use the tarp, but the tarp isn't, I've run into some issues with tarps before. The thing with the plastic is that it allows the sun to penetrate through, and that actually helps kill off anything that is going to try to grow underneath, because it'll essentially be like a magnifying glass, and that's really useful. So you can use a tarp, but you can also get the plastic. The plastic is super cheap. I think at Home Depot it's like maybe $5 or $8 depending on the size you get. And that is going to be super helpful. Now, I always love a good garden work day, coming back to school. But yeah, you can use garbage bags as well. You cut the garbage bags down the side, and that works. Yeah. So now the other thing, okay, listen, there is yeah, it's like drop cloths. I think maybe that's what it's called. It's like painter's drop cloths, but it's polyethylene, like thin plastic. So that's going to be your best bet. Now you can of course always throw some cover crops in there, like buckwheat, and that will help. But sometimes if you're not coming in for the summer and it's not you have a dry summer, that's going to die. And you're going to run into the same issues with the weeds. So now there's another thing, and I've actually had rats. Does anybody here have a rat problem in their garden? Because it is a very real problem, and it's a really hard problem to deal with. So, if you're having a rat problem, I will tell you right now, I've had this problem before, especially out in rural areas, like rural schools, because the schools tend to be the best place for rats to live. It is like a headquarters of perfectness for them. And I tried everything I possibly could, and the only thing that worked were putting out an immense amount of rat traps. That's really the only thing you can do. You can try to put poison down, but the poison that is good for rats is you can't put it close to the garden. I don't think it can be like 50 to 100 feet in range to, and their droppings. Yeah. So now they tear up the garden, but then their droppings, and then the students can't, you can't use that garden. The soil has to be mitigated. So the way that I have found to do it the best is just rat traps. And however many rat traps you think you need, double it. At the very least, because it's a population that grows really fast. You're fighting something that that's the only way to do it, and you're gonna have to stay consistent with it for a while. And if you try to put some kind of barrier, they always get through it. Another way to try to avoid this is, a lot of the times you have a garden, and what do we want to put, right next to our garden? Well, our compost pile. Of course, because that's our garden area. Like, that makes sense. We're pulling stuff up. All right. Maybe we have just a single pallet over here and we just throw all of our stuff there. You want your compost pile further than you think from the garden. I would keep it at least 100 feet away from the garden, because that's going to attract a bunch of bugs, a bunch of insects. Yep, cats as well. It's going to attract deer. It's going to attract rats. So you want to try to keep that, away. It can almost be like a decoy, right? So keep in mind, that is going to be, a contributor. So if you do have, compost right there, just push it a little bit further. You're going to save yourself so much trouble. Now, in regards to so deer, here's another really big problem. School cat rodent mitigation crew. That's funny. So, deer can be a really big issue, and man, there's like almost nothing deer won't eat. Like, if you have a garden, it might as well be a buffet. And I hate to be the one to tell you this, but the only thing you can do to prevent deer really is put up so you want a 10-foot fence, but relax, it doesn't have to be a super expensive 10-foot fence. The cheapest and best way that I have found to do this is you get a bunch of rebar. So it's, instead of getting nice wood and hammering it in, making a fence, it's really, really easy. Get some rebar sticks you can stick in the ground, get a mallet and hammer it down. And once it's down deep enough, you want to make sure that's like 2 to 2.5 to 3 feet deep. Okay. Then you take chicken wire or even like the plastic netting, and you want to do 2 around. So you'll put one all the way around, and obviously you're going to put the rebar like all like around the garden, and you're going to wrap it the with the chicken wire or the whatever whatever kind of cheap fencing you want to use. And then you're going to want to use the second one to double it in height. Okay. And that is going to be your best deterrent for deer. Deer can jump. They will jump. If you only put in a small one, you're going to run into that problem. I will say the chicken wire is better than the thin plastic fence, because you will have bunnies chew through the thin plastic. It looks like chicken wire, but it's not. It's like that thin plastic stuff. I don't remember what its like brand name is called. But both rabbits and rats will chew through the bottom of it or dig and get underneath it. So the chicken wire does work better. It's sturdier. But also, hopefully you're building out other things, and that's just going to be a temporary solution. It's not the sexiest looking thing, but it does get the job done, and it is cheap and efficient. Then as far as things go, like pests, so if you're getting a lot of aphids, if you're getting, a lot of these, oh my gosh, what are the root ones called? Root aphids. Okay. And you just, no matter what you do, everything you put out there just gets eaten up. It's because you're creating an oasis in the middle of nothing, right? There's no other biodiversity there. There's a couple of different options here. So the things that I like to use are either neem oil. And if you do neem oil and you rotate using neem oil with a mixture of red pepper, like, like either ground red pepper or a bunch of red pepper flakes with a bunch of cloves of garlic, and make that into a mixture. Okay. And you're going to want to let that sit, like you're going to want to let that sit for about 3 days. And then you can use that to spray down all of the plants, and that does a phenomenal job. You don't want to overdo the plants with it, so that's why I would say rotate it with the neem oil, but that will be a huge help. And then you want to make sure, put some worm castings into the garden. That's going to be all organic nutrients, and it's going to help enrich the soil. Healthier soil means healthier plants, means they can resist pests better. Any questions on, and I'll do this really quickly. Everybody wants to grow tomatoes. Don't grow tomatoes. It's so much work. It's so messy. Plus you need tomato cages. You don't need the you don't need that. You're not, what are you going to save all the tomatoes over time in order to make a pasta sauce? That's ridiculous. The cafeteria is not going to do that for you, because they don't want you messing up their cafeteria. So that's going to be really hard to do. And it's going to be really messy, and it's going to be hard to manage. What we recommend for growing like successfully in a school garden and doing enough to be able to do farm to cafeteria is you're going to want to focus on higher turnover crops or continuous harvest crops. So when I say that, what I mean is plant out half of your garden with collard greens and kale, right? Something that you continuously harvest off of. So that's something that, once you get it to a certain stage, it's ready for harvest, but you're not harvesting the whole thing, and it's going to keep growing more. So it's going to be all right. You're going to leave it, and it's going to stay established after you harvest it. Okay. And then you want to plant the other half of your garden with, something that is like turnips or radishes or lettuce, because those are all very fast turnaround crops. So, turnips, you're looking at, 25 to 45 days before they're ready for harvest. You can use the top and the bottom. So you're getting the greens and you're getting the bulb. Same thing with radishes, right? You can do the same thing with radishes. Or lettuce, right? Lettuce, how long does a head of lettuce take to be ready for harvest? Well, guess what? Technically, you can harvest lettuce at any point in its life. You can do that with most plants. But specifically with lettuce, we eat baby lettuce all the time. We harvest it early, we harvest it late. But in order to have a head of lettuce full grown, again, you're looking anywhere between 30 to 45 days. So those are going to be fast turnaround, and they're going to give you a lot, right? You're going to get more with that. And so plant out half of your garden with these, fast turnaround crops. Okay, so anywhere between 25 to 45 days. And then the other half with something that's going to be of continuous harvest. So when you do a big harvest, right, and you harvest all the turnips, you harvest all the radishes. I personally, the turnips are my favorite. You harvest all the turnips and you harvest and you go through and you pick all the good colored leaves. You can do one giant mashup of those together and cook them all in one big thing for the students. The cafeteria might add some bacon or some pork into it. And then each student can get a serving, of that. And it's reliable. Those are things you can count on. That isn't something where, oh, you got a horned worm and all of a sudden you go to harvest and, it's gone. These are very hardy plants. Collard greens are always super reliable. There are frost tolerant varieties. There are heat tolerant varieties, and our kits come with both heat and frost tolerant ones. So regardless of which zone you're in, there are options for you, and you can use them, throughout the entire summer. Same thing with kale, and same thing with turnips. Lettuce is a cool season crop, and we'll never get out of that. So lettuce, during the winter is your opportunity to do that. Now, any fall seeds that can be done in the beginning of the school year. So, yeah, so it so it depends on if you're, starting them inside or if you're, planting them directly into the ground. It's really hard with fall seeds. Most likely the first round of seeds that you're going to start in the classroom are you're going to lose a decent percent of them, or they're not going to be something inevitably will happen, or during transplant something's going to happen. So and I like to always do 2 rounds of seed starters in the beginning of the year, just so that way I can account for like the extra loss, and just in case if there's a storm and school shuts down or something crazy. But the seeds that I would be starting right now in my classroom, and it does depend a little bit on where you are, but if you're starting them inside, it's not a big deal. You want to be starting things so there are different lettuces that I would be starting right now. So any kind of heat tolerant lettuce would be really great to start now, because you'd be able to get a transplant in and harvest that lettuce before you would be starting your frost tolerant lettuce. And any lettuce that is going to be grown through proper winter is going to be more buttery and more sweet, compared to any of your heat tolerant seeds for lettuce, which are going to be a bit stronger. They're going to be, they're not going to be like that soft butter crunch lettuce, right? I wouldn't start that right now. Now, starting seeds at the end of September, I would start any kind of lettuce seeds you desire. I would also do one of my favorite things to do is rainbow Swiss chard. Rainbow Swiss chard is great. You can do continual harvest with that. You're going to want to start that now in the classroom. That does take a little bit to get established, but what's so nice about it is that it's so pretty. So it adds this beautiful color to the garden that when the kids go out, after a nice big growth spurt, they're like, oh my God, like the garden is painted. And it's really great. You can mix it in with the harvest of the turnips and the collard greens. You can saute it all up together. Those all work really well together. The students will be surprised that they like the taste of it. And that will be really successful. And then right now as well, if you have like larger bulb turnips, you can plant and you can start larger bulb turnips, like purple white globe top. Those are turnips that get really large. And I have always found that if I try to start those around the time that I'm normally starting like our regular plants and like our turnips, the larger bulb turnips take much longer to grow, and they're very impressive looking, but I always end up messing that timing up. So as far as turnips would go, if you have larger bulb turnips, I would definitely go with that. Oh, and also any herbs, starting any herbs right now would be very good. And anything that's going to be, good to integrate for pest management, nasturtium, cilantro, fennel, all things like that. And one other thing that I wanted to say, if you are a school that has the drinking fountains shut off because you have lead in your pipes, and so the school does not allow the students to drink the water from the water fountains. You can't use that water to water the garden. I would highly recommend establishing some rain barrels and using that. Well, I want to do sensory garden. And so yeah, so we do our full year our garden kits come with like sensory garden seeds. So that is a great question, and a question I can easily answer because that's one of the things that we do. So we actually have all of that that we work with all the time. There's a lot of really great seeds you can use for a sensory garden. So there's, with our kits, you get like an insane amount of seeds for turnips, an insane amount of seeds for collard greens, a whole bunch of seeds for lettuce. But then you get a bunch of these other seeds that you only get 4 seeds of or 6 seeds of. And the seeds that you only get that much of are going to be your engagement seeds or your sensory seeds. So for example, hot peppers, habanero peppers, or jalapeno peppers. Okay. You're not going to grow an entire garden of jalapeno peppers. That's ridiculous. I would not recommend that. But you can grow some, so that way when the students go out and there's a couple of them, on the plants, they can take those, and you're not taking up too much garden space with that. But they can take one and they can break it up and they can share it and they can see how hot it is or how not hot it is, because you always have one student who's like, oh, that's not hot at all, right? Like I was that student, like nothing bothers me. So, hot peppers work really well. Another thing that you're going to want to do, so sage has almost velvet-like leaves. So sage is always a really good one. It's also going to help with pest management. Another sensory seed that you would like, that I would recommend, is it's one of those we provide. It's called buzz buttons. It's also known as spillanthus. So spillanthus is really cool. It's actually an edible flower. And this edible flower is what they used to use before doctors, or sorry, I should say dentists are doctors, sorry. But before specifically dentists would do work in someone's mouth, is they would have their patients chew on this spillanthus flower. And what it does is it actually makes your mouth go numb. So you can grow some of these spillanthus flowers, and then, when the kids go out there and there's some flowers, you can pull one and you can break it up into a bunch of pieces and you can have them chew on it. And you're always going to get the one kid who really over dramatizes it and is like, oh, it's like he's like drooling out of his mouth. He's like, I can't feel anything, I can't swallow. And it's just fun, right? Like that kind of, it makes it, more of an experience and allows kids to like actually, just have the experience of experiencing it. The other thing I would recommend is listen, all right, I know I said not to do this, but for a sensory garden, like, and you get a couple with us, but we don't do a lot. Tomatoes, but specifically cherry tomatoes. So you really don't want to do a lot of tomatoes. You can do some for engagement and for sensory, but you don't do specifically cherry tomatoes. There's one brand we use, I don't remember what the name specifically of our variety is, but it's something similar to like sweet 1000s or sweet 100s or something. And they're these little cherry tomatoes that grow on like this long vine. So the reason that I say do cherry tomatoes, not regular tomatoes, is because it takes a lot of energy and effort to grow like that one big beefsteak tomato. Well, then you have one tomato, like you can't really easily share that with all the kids. And also, if you have pests come in, or horned worm come in while you're gone over the weekend, that tomato's gone, it's done, and now you have nothing. So with cherry tomatoes, you're getting more individual tomatoes, so that way all of your students can have a piece, right, instead of having to figure out what to do with one tomato. And so that's going to be like, if you're going to do a tomato, which again, I support some, just not the whole garden, do cherry tomatoes. There's also a variety called patio tomato, which is like a miniature cherry tomato plant. It's like a dwarf, and that one is really good. I also really recommend nasturtium. Nasturtium is an edible flower. The leaves and the flower are edible, and it's spicy. You eat this flower, and you can break the flower up really easily into multiple pieces. It's great for a pest deterrent, and it is delicious chefs pay a lot of money for it. And when the students try it, their like mind is blown because they don't expect a flour to be spicy. And so it's a lot of fun. So just for like, right off the top of my head, I would definitely recommend those. And if you're in Southwest Florida, all of those will grow really, really well in there. And then of course, I like fennel or cilantro also makes for a really good one. Lemon balm is also a really good sensory one. Arugula is another really good one. Also for a couple different things for seed saving and for sensory, I will say if you have lettuce, like any kind of lettuce, and you plant it during the wrong time of year, let it like do that and let it go to seed because it will bolt really, really fast to go to seed because of the light cycle if you plant it during the wrong time of year. And so it won't take very long. And you can do a seed saving lesson with that and do the entire life cycle of a plant. And you do get some like you get great sensory stuff out of that as well as pollinators because it's going to shoot up and produce this like beautiful like firework explosion of these beautiful yellow flowers. And those yellow flowers are going to turn into like the dandelions you can blow that like blow out everywhere. And those are the seeds and you can collect those. Just FYI, little secret of the trade. But it'll happen really fast if you do it outside. You can grow some during season and then just leave one or two. But if you do it out of season, it will be really, it'll happen really, really fast. Good for seed saving. I'm gonna say it up front. If you are seed saving, you are putting in the extra work and that's it. And there's no getting around that. And with that being said, then the method for seed saving is your refrigerator. I wouldn't risk putting it in the fridge at school. I've had the fridge be cleaned out and then all my seeds are gone. If you have a little mini fridge in your fridge, then that you can obviously store them there. You want to make sure when you harvest the seeds. So the most important part is try to wait as long as you can to harvest them. When you do harvest them, do like for example the lettuce, right? So the lettuce goes to bolt and it's going to have one stalk that's going up. Bring scissors. Don't try to bend it because what happens when you bend it is it's going to shake off all of the seeds because that's what's supposed to happen, right? Like that's how it distributes the seeds. So bring out a nice pair of sharp scissors, cut off, halfway through, and then from there, either bring a bucket or a bag so you don't drop some extra seeds as you're walking. You want to put those on like a tray, or like on a back desk somewhere, and just don't keep it in a bag. Don't keep it anything. You want it to like air dry out. You can even, put it by a window. And you want it to just, try to let it dry out, for even a little bit longer. So then after, maybe 5 days to, a week later, then you can go through and you can, lift it up off of the tray and try to shake it and just kind of try to get off all of those seeds. Make sure you pick out any debris. I like to use one of those, you'd want mesh that's smaller than like a regular colander. So probably a sieve. I just actually don't know what that is. I think that's right. So you want to use that because that's going to let the extra debris from the seed casing kind of fall through that mesh without losing the seed. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to close this out. My email is in the chat if you want it, and I can send you some worksheets. And thank you guys so much. And I hope you guys have a great school year.